Ladies and gentlemen, the town clerk advises me that we have a quorum. Take your seats, please. A quorum being present, I call to order the first special town meeting. I acknowledge the publication and proper service of each warrant for the two town meetings that will be held this evening, and call on Dr. Slayton to lead us in the Star-Spangled Banner.
Welcome, everyone. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. May we have quiet, please? A few announcements before we get underway, as usual. Please silence your cell phones and electronic devices except to the extent that you need them to follow the proceedings of our meeting. I remind all speakers to announce your name and precinct before starting your remarks. And I'd appreciate your doing this because it saves me from having to remind you, which I will do in as gentle a way as possible, as opposed to my usual procedures. All speakers, unless I have given them extra time, have 5 minutes. And once again, please keep within that time frame so that I don't have to remind you to conclude your remarks. Questions from the floor should be addressed to the moderator. And finally, I announce that Jennifer Goldsmith will chair a meeting to summarize the results of the Town Meeting Members Association survey that more than half of you filled out. This will be held at 7 p.m. on April 30th in the main library. A few remarks about electronic voting. The voting period will, as it has been, be 60 seconds. And I remind you not to vote in the last few seconds, or your vote is likely not to be recorded. Please check the numbers on your name tags against the number in your devices to make sure that you have the right device. And we will, during the voting period, scroll twice through the list of town meeting members, and after the conclusion of the voting period, we will scroll once through the entire set of slides. For corrections, if your vote has not been properly recorded, please see Kelly Durgan in the rear of the auditorium. She will replace your handheld device and then make yourself known and your change of vote known to the town clerk. We'll have an electronic voting dry run at this point, and the motion before you is resolved that Robert Kraft should admit to sufficient facts. vote, press 1 if you're in favor of that resolution, 2 if you're opposed, and 3 if you're abstaining. You need only press your handheld device once. The motion carries overwhelmingly. Please confirm your vote as we scroll through the last set of slides. Okay, thank you very much. We turn to Article 1 of the first special town meeting. The motion offered by Mr. Schwartz, seconded by Mr. Green, is found on page 1-2 to approve and fund by appropriation the collective bargaining agreement with the Brookline Police Union and the memorandum a couple of pages later is incorporated in this vote, which spells out the details of the settlement. Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you. Chuck Schwartz, Precinct 9 for the Advisory Committee on Article 1. The Town of Brookline and the Brookline Police Union entered into a memorandum of agreement for a contract covering fiscal years 2017 through 2019. Similar to other recent contracts that the town has agreed to, this contract calls for a 2% annual increase, plus a stipend of 1.5% for the first year of the contract for the completion of crisis intervention training. This increase is to become part of the base salary. The rollout cost of this agreement is $2,006,417, an increase of 7.6% over 3 years. Other terms of the agreement are that members of the union wear name tags issued by the department, a transition to a Friday payday, which is in line with other departments, to work with the chief to develop a mandatory seatbelt usage policy, and that patrol officers assigned as field training officers will receive a stipend equivalent to either 2 hours of straight time pay or 2 hours of compensatory time per shift. Chief Lipson explained that the town acts as a regional training center for crisis intervention training, which is mandatory for all Brookline police officers. This is a 40-hour class on mental health issues, identifying crisis situations, and sharing crisis experiences. Brookline and other communities receive grant funding to support attendance. Agreement to this contract provides police officers with terms similar to those of other departments. One member of the advisory committee, however, thought that the cost of this agreement goes beyond these parameters, probably to avoid the threat of arbitration and possible unfavorable decision for the Joint Labor Management Committee. By a vote of 25 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention, the advisory committee recommends favorable action on Article 1, appropriating the funds for this agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Good evening, town moderator and town meeting members. I'm Bernard Green for the Select Board. Before I begin my presentation, I want to acknowledge that tonight will be Neil Wyshynski's last town meeting as a member of the Board of the Select Board. Wait, I'm going to give you an opportunity to clap. Let's thank him for the great work he's done for the town as a member of the Select Board. Now you can clap. I understand that his service to the town will continue as a town meeting member from Precinct 5, so we're not losing him completely. So Chuck Schwartz gave a good summary of the terms of the Memorandum of Agreement, or MOU, reached by the town and the Brookline Police Union, which I don't need to repeat. Rather, I'd like to focus on two provisions in the MOU that are significant beyond these negotiations. First, the 1.5% that Mr. Schwartz mentioned, added to the base of an officer's salary upon completing Crisis Intervention Training, or CIT. This training, as I think he's already said, will be required of all Brookline sworn officers, and 53 have already taken the training. Brookline is also a regional CIT training center. This is an expenditure that is absolutely well worth making. CIT training gives officers important skills that both protect public safety and help to avoid unnecessary struggles between police and civilians by de-escalating tense situations, especially when an officer encounters a person with mental disabilities or similar problems. Such problems include individuals suffering from trauma, such as PTSD, or trauma resulting from violence in their family or in their community. Individuals suffering from substance abuse or who are suicidal, and individuals on the autism spectrum or with Asperger's syndrome or similar issues. These individuals may present themselves in ways that could be seen as threatening to an officer who does not have the training that they get with CIT to understand the conditions that these people have and to be empathetic to the internal struggles that they may be going through. The failure to respond appropriately by untrained police officers is a cause of many of the tragedies arising from police-civilian violence that we see across the country. CIT training also addresses other issues that impact how people respond to stress or to the presence of a police officer, such as cultural differences and unique experiences that some people have, such as experiences of combat veterans. CIT training also includes peer support training to address the stress and trauma that police officers themselves may experience. You should know, as members of this community, that this training has been used successfully here in Brookline many times to help de-escalate the emotions and actions of individuals in distress and to help them get the assistance that they need instead of degenerating into tragic situations. Second, the stipend for field training officer duty also reflects important expenditure. It reflects the department's commitment to continuous training and improvement of police officers, beginning with their initial days on the job, when new recruits may have the opportunity to ride alongside experienced officers and learn about police duties and the Brookline Police Department, and get firsthand experience of their responsibilities as a police officer. This is an additional responsibility and an additional professional development opportunity for experienced officers who elect to become trained as field training officers. Very, very important expenditures. I think no one should minimize the significance of these programs and the money we're spending on them to the type of quality police work that our police department provides. So, in addition to the reasons given by Mr. Schwartz, these two provisions stand out as vitally important, not just to Brookline's police officers, but also to the wider community of residents, visitors, and individuals passing through Brookline. For these reasons, the Select Board voted 4-0 with one member absent for favorable action on warrant Article 1 at its meeting on March 19, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Margolis.
Mr. Moderator, John Margolis, Precinct 7. Mr. Moderator, John Margolis, Precinct 7. One question. Do I hear right, are we about to vote on a 3-year contract that will expire in 2.5 months?
The answer is yes.
Big a vote.
On the motion on page 1-2, those in favor, please raise your hands. Those opposed, raise your hands. Motion carries unanimously. I beg your pardon, Mr. Friedman. I should have known. Motion carries 188-1. I should always look in your direction, Mr. Friedman. Now we proceed to the Newbury College articles. They are within this special town meeting, Article 2, the motion for which is no action, moved by Mr. Wyszynski, seconded by Mr. Lynn Jones. Article 3, on page 3 motion is on page 3-6, moved by Mr. Wyszynski, seconded by Mr. Lynn Jones. And if you'll turn to that page, the following words should be added prior to the resolution itself for purposes of the motion offered under this article. Voted that the town accept the following resolution, colon, and then resolution calling for, etc. We will also be debating the Article 1 of the special town meeting, second special town meeting. In other words, we will have a single debate on all 3 of these articles, all of which relate to the acquisition of the Newbury College property, even though I won't technically convene the second special town meeting for another 8 minutes. So, the motion under that article, for those of you who are interested, is a motion in the form, in the wording of the article on page 1-1 of the combined reports for the second special town meeting, moved by Ms. Frawley. Is there a second? Seconded. On the Newbury College articles, I call first on Mr. Wyszynski. You have 7 minutes.
Good evening, Neil Wyszynski for the Select Board. It isn't often that 7.8 acres of prime land comes on the market in Brookline, and that's exactly the opportunity presented by the closing of Newbury College and the sale of its campus. A few days after the closing was announced, a team of town officials toured the campus at the top of Fisher Hill and began the process of figuring out how to approach such an opportunity. We then requested, and the advisory committee granted $150,000 out of the reserve fund to support the effort, and we appointed a Newbury College Acquisition Advisory Committee. That committee has been meeting weekly, has hired expert consultants, and is now formulating a bid and financing strategy for a potential town purchase of the site. At this point, we expect Newbury will be accepting bids for the campus beginning on April 24th. You must understand that Brookline will be competing with other potential buyers, and success is not guaranteed. In fact, we understand there's a lot of developer interest in the property, and this isn't in any way surprising given the strong local economy and how attractive the site is. However, we believe the town is well positioned to make a timely and competitive bid. Determining land use after purchase is outside the scope of the committee. Under normal circumstances, we would determine how the site is to be used prior to purchase, as we did at 111 Cypress, but we don't have time to figure this out given the bid deadline. But there's one exception to an upfront land use decision. As I said, the committee is considering potential financing strategies. The committee is looking at the feasibility of moving some programs for which the town is currently renting space to the so-called academic center on the west side of the campus. We're currently renting classrooms for the BEEP, the Brookline Early Education Program, and some offices. Those rents can be used to partially offset future debt service. The committee is therefore looking at what it would take to adapt that space for 11 or 12 BEEP classrooms plus offices. So, beyond using the academic center and the land immediately surrounding it, we would need to engage in an inclusive planning process to determine the best use of the remainder of the campus. The town has many needs, including recreation, affordable housing, workforce housing, senior housing, in addition to educational uses. The town's recently completed strategic asset plan will inform this process. We also need to consider whether we can afford to keep the entire campus, or should we partner with private entities to strategically develop some of the campus. And this planning process will need to have a deadline of 2 or so years, since the short-term financing we're using to purchase the site will come due. If the bid is successful, the details of this will need to be spelled out. Through all of this, we'll need to be mindful of the expense and proceed carefully and with prudence. I'm aware that some of you are hoping that Newberry can replace the Baldwin site as the location for the 9th Elementary School. You should be aware that the existing college buildings are not adaptable to elementary school use at the necessary scale and would in all likelihood trigger the need for expensive renovation and code upgrades. And yes, there are classrooms, but they were designed for college purposes, not for an elementary school. And there aren't enough of them. To situate a new elementary school on the Newberry campus, we would need to build a completely new school up on Fisher Hill and start the planning process all over again, setting us back years. Buying the campus and opening an elementary school there in September is an unrealistic pipe dream. I'll also note that the neighborhood is already well served by 2 schools. Newberry is 1,000 feet from Runkle and 1,500 from Heath. In all likelihood, an elementary school on the Newberry campus would be an all-commuter school and distort the Runkle, Heath, and possibly Lincoln districts. Now for the warrant articles. Article 2 of the first town meeting and the second town meeting, Article 1, are authorizations to authorize the purchase of the campus. Since we don't have a deal, the Select Board is urging no action. We've placed an acquisition authorization article on the May annual town meeting warrant as a placeholder in case there is a deal at that time. That leaves us with Article 3 and the motion that the advisory committee is suggesting. And that's where you can help. The advisory committee motion is a statement of support for the town's efforts to purchase the Newberry campus. Any offer we make will require a 2/3 vote of town meeting before it's accepted, and thus a town offer to purchase the campus will be contingent on town meeting approval. A strong show of support for the resolution tonight will send a message to Newberry and the marketplace that the town is a serious buyer, that purchasing the campus has widespread support, and this will strengthen the town's bid. So, if you think the town should attempt to purchase the Newberry campus, vote yes on the resolution. If you want to help strengthen our bid, vote yes on the resolution. Be assured that a strong show of support will be noticed by Newbury and our competition. A unanimous Select Board urges favorable action on the Advisory Committee motion on Article 3, no action on the other motions.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Sean Lynn Jones, Precinct 1 and Chair of the Advisory Committee, speaking for an advisory committee that unanimously recommends favorable action on a resolution under Article 3 of Special Town Meeting 1. But before I start, I'd like to say a few words about Neil Wyshynski. I know Bernard Green has already honored Neil for his service, but I'd like to say a few things about Neil on behalf of the Advisory Committee. Neil, of course, has been on the Select Board for 6 years, but before that, he served for many years on the Advisory Committee and was Vice Chair of the committee. This is his last town meeting as a member and Chair of the Select Board. And I think it's appropriate to say that Neil has poured his heart and soul into service, to serving the town of Brookline. Whether you agree with him or not on some of the positions he's taken, you have to recognize the extraordinarily high level of activity, of commitment, and political courage that he has brought to this position. I don't think any other chair of the Select Board in recent times has given us such a steady hand in such choppy waters. So I hope you'll join me in thanking Neil Wyshynski yet again for everything he's done for the town. That said, I'd like to turn to the warrant articles on the Newbury College acquisition and start off by reiterating some of the key points that Mr. Wyshynski's made. First, the possibility of acquiring the Newbury College property is indeed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Rarely do parcels of this size become available in the heart of Brookline. The Newbury property has multiple potential uses, including education, recreation, and housing, all of which would serve community purposes. Acquiring the Newbury property would enable the town to control its future use. Obviously, there are going to be changes to the property after Newbury College sells it. If the town buys the campus, we can control our own destiny instead of reacting to and negotiating with the developer or other owner who acquires the property. Second, and this may not have come through quite as clearly in Mr. Wyshynski's comments, the town's bid for the Newbury College property is more likely to be successful if the bid is as simple as possible, with the absolute minimum number of contingencies. And this is what the Acquisition Advisory Committee has been working on. I suspect that the trustees of Newbury College are probably going to be less interested in a bid that entails a long, drawn-out process during which multiple contingencies have to be satisfied. The third key point, as Mr. Wyshynski emphasized, is that the town meeting can support this process by voting for a resolution that makes clear that there is widespread support for the town's bid. If you want to maximize the chances that Brookline will acquire Newbury, vote for the resolution recommended by the Advisory Committee and supported by the Select Board. A resolution that incorporates language and ideas from the amendment drafted by Mark Levy. The Advisory Committee recognized the salience of these 3 points when we considered the Newbury acquisition process and the 3 warrant articles that town meeting will vote on tonight. When we first considered the Newbury College property and its potential acquisition, it was back in January when the Select Board asked for a reserve fund transfer of $150,000 to support the work of the Newbury College Acquisition Advisory Committee. We asked some tough questions about this transfer request, probably more questions than Mr. Wyszynski wanted to hear. But we wanted to make sure that we had the right kind of people on the advisory committee with the right kind of expertise. We also wanted to make sure that the acquisition advisory committee would focus like a laser beam on preparing a competitive bid for the property, instead of spending a lot of time studying alternative uses at this stage. And we are satisfied that the committee includes members with precisely the right sort of expertise. We put a great team together. We have members who have knowledge of commercial and nonprofit real estate transactions, as well as very specific experience in managing the sale of property of colleges that are closing. The committee has focused on acquiring the property, not endlessly debating alternative uses. The advisory committee then went on to draft a resolution under Article 3, which it recommends unanimously. This is a substitute motion under Article 3 of Special Town Meeting 1 that includes some revisions to the resolution. It specifies what the committee and the select board have done so far. And as I said, it adopts some very helpful language from the amendment offered by town meeting member Mark Levy. We support this substitute motion because, one, it specifies the purchase of the entire Newbury campus. Two, it identifies the due diligence and the efforts that have been made and will continue to be made to acquire the property. Three, it notes the possibility of using the town's eminent domain authority. And four, it allows for a wide range of future uses for the property. Mr. Wyszynski pointed out that the town can indeed finance the acquisition of this property through short-term borrowing. It appears that this strategy would not jeopardize the town's AAA bond rating. During a period of approximately 2 years, the town would study how to use the property, drawing on the recently completed strategic asset plan, and consider what sort of long-term financing to adopt. Options include selling portions of the Newbury property or a debt exclusion override. Now, Mr. Wyszynski has already commented at some length about potential uses for the property, so I won't repeat what he said. The advisory committee has taken the position that we should acquire the property and then engage in an in-depth study of potential uses. Ms. Raleigh, who has moved an article for Special Town Meeting 2, has pointed out that in the future, the town may well experience population growth and school enrollment growth. It's always hard to predict the future of population trends or of school enrollment growth, but it's important to note that if we do have that sort of increase, we're going to need more facilities. And one key point about the Newbury property is, unlike so many of the properties looked at for the ninth school, it has not got lots of restrictions on the use of the land or the construction of buildings on it. That brings me to our recommendations. We cannot, at this point, as town meeting, vote to authorize acquisition of the property because we don't know if the town's bid will be accepted or even the dollar amount of the town's bid or the eventual purchase price for the property. Thus, the advisory committee is recommending no action on the 2 articles that would authorize or fund acquisition. An article similar to these articles, to Article 2 of Special Town Meeting 1 in particular, would be appropriate perhaps for the May town meeting or a subsequent special town meeting, but it's premature now. Thus, we are recommending favorable action on a resolution that declares town meeting support for acquiring the Newbury property. We unanimously urge favorable action on this resolution to send a clear message of support for Brookline's bid to buy the Newbury property, and we recommend no action under Article 2 of Special Town Meeting 1 and no action under Article 1 of Special Town Meeting 2. Thank you very much.
Now, Mr. Bassett, I'm going to have a Q&A period after a few more speakers, so you'll have a chance to ask your question. I need to deal with some technical issues, and you can all zone out for the next minute or so while I do so. We adjourn the first special town meeting until for a couple of minutes, and I call to order the second special town meeting, which I will promptly adjourn until we complete the voting on the articles under the first special town meeting, and I reconvene that meeting and call on Mr. Harris. That concludes the technical portion of the meeting.
Thank you. John Harris, Precinct 8 and co-petitioner of the Newbury Resolution. I'd like to start by thanking several people, and this will give you a sense of the wide support in town for acquiring Newbury. First, Regina Frowley, for spearheading the citizen petition campaign that led us to being here tonight. Second, Janice Kahn, for drafting an earlier version of the resolution. Also, the members of the large ad hoc Newbury Group campaign that led to the resolution, comprised of fiscal conservatives as well as tree huggers like myself, of residents of both North and South Brookline, of people on both sides of a recent controversial school project, and crucially, of several members of the Newbury College neighborhood. In particular, I'd like to thank Paula Friedman of the neighborhood, a close neighbor of Newbury, for her letter to the editor in the tab called PIMBY, Please in My Neighborhood. Or, sorry, Please in My Backyard. Would also like to thank Mark Levy, whose amendment formed much of the basis for tonight's resolution, as Mr. Lynn Jones has said. Would also like to thank Brookline PAX for endorsing the resolution. This is the liberal and progressive constituency in town. Would also like to thank the members of the Planning and Regulation, meaning the subcommittee, the policy wonks in town, the Capital Subcommittee, the penny pinchers in town, for their enthusiastic, open-minded, and fair discussions that led to tonight's compromise resolution, and whose deliberations led to the unanimous support of the full advisory committee, the select board, and the petitioners. Finally, I'd like to thank Select Board Chair Neil Wazinski for leading the establishment of the acquisition committee, for the many hours he spent on one-to-one negotiations smoothing out differences, and very importantly, for adding 2 significant strengtheners to the resolution. And if you look at your booklet on the last page for special town meeting number 1, look at the further resolved number 1. That sentence contains 2 very important ideas. The first in that sentence, an unambiguous statement that the town's objective is to purchase the entire campus and not just part. That way we control the future of the entire parcel. Very importantly, as Mr. Lynn Jones mentioned, that sentence also states very clearly that Brookline is willing to consider the use of eminent domain. That, combined with the town's existing zoning authority, gives us a significant advantage against competing bidders. The fact that that idea was initiated by the chair of and backed by a unanimous select board gives it much greater gravitas than if proposed by private citizens. It means we're not kidding. It's an indication that many in Brookline are determined to acquire the Newbury College campus for use by the citizens. So we hope that tonight you make a very strong statement in support. As to uses, I'm going to claim special credibility and notoriety with some of you, and probably notoriety with others, by telling you I voted in favor of Baldwin. Some will like that, some will not, but I suggest that tonight that does not matter. The resolution very carefully focuses on the purchase, and as has been said, deliberately puts off decisions on uses to later. And again, I would ask you to look at the language of the resolution on the second to last page, the second whereas, bottom of the page, where it says the property, quote, may be used to help meet a variety of current and future needs, of municipal and school needs, including open space, affordable housing, and education facilities, among other uses. Very carefully worded to be inclusive, and so far as has been said, or has earned unanimous support, and we hope it will serve as a rallying point for all of us tonight. Whenever Newbury has come up, in every group I've spoken to or heard about, people have excitedly brought up new possibilities. At EDAB, we heard about affordable housing. At school committee, the BEEP program. Among senior groups, assisted living housing and or a satellite senior center. At 2 separate meetings, an outdoor swimming pool. At the Green Caucus, a wildlife corridor. Whatever the heck that is. The Newbury Group campaign should have filed a follow-up resolution for the Maytown meeting calling for a leisurely, open, and thoughtful public process to decide permanent uses, but deadlines came and went. So tonight, we ask that if we are successful in acquiring Newbury, that the select board and other decision makers follow such an open procedure. Let's actively solicit ideas from every resident. Let's give everyone the fun of community brainstorming. The 7.87 acre campus is large enough for most, if not all, of the best uses. In conclusion, the Newbury campus will benefit every member of the community, and everyone should have a say in how we use it. We hope town meeting feels the same sense of excitement about this possibility that we do. Tonight, let's make a very strong statement expressing Brookline's determination to acquire the Newbury College campus. I strongly urge favorable action on the Newbury resolution as amended by the advisory committee. Thank you.
Mr. Harris asked for 6 minutes. He took 5 minutes. You get a gold star. Mr. Margolis?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Margolis, Precinct 7. I take my text tonight from two men who were smarter than I am. One was Ambrose Bierce. In his book, The Devil's Dictionary, he defined the word positive to mean mistaken at the top of one's voice. The second was Justice Louis Brandeis. Justice Brandeis once observed that in the case of almost all disputes, it is more important that they be resolved than how they are resolved. We, in December, by a rather substantial margin, approved the Baldwin School. Is there anyone here who thinks that we would be meeting tonight if we had voted the Baldwin School down in December? Really? I suggest to you that we would not need a meeting over Newbury College. There is, in fact, virtually no opposition to acquiring it. I would only like to say that we've made a decision going forward. I think you've heard already tonight, and you've seen the statement from the school committee as to why the acquisition of Newbury should not have anything to do with the decision we have made to go forward with the Baldwin project, and that's my view as well. So I recommend voting no on the article in the special town meeting 2. And I will follow the advice of the advisory committee and the select board with respect to Article 2 in the special town meeting 1. Finally, I will not give any more encomiums to Neil Wyshynski, but I know he's counting the hours until his term ends.
Thank you, Ms. Lodish.
Okay, I'm going to get a gold star too. I stand here this evening as a long-term resident of the Fisher Hill neighborhood. I'm Pam
sorry.
Lodish, Precinct 14. Is that
Thank
what you want me?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
we're good.
exactly what I was looking for.
Okay, I'm on the advisory committee and I'm an officer in the Fisher Hill Association. For over 33 years, I lived on Fisher Avenue, just a few blocks from Newbury College. And a few years ago, my husband and I sold our large home and moved up the hill, just a few blocks away. I'm here tonight to speak as the official representative of the Fisher Hill Association. For anyone from our association to be able to speak with the voice of the neighborhood, we first had to get consensus from our members. And so to do this, on Sunday afternoon, March 24th, the Fisher Hill Association, that comprises approximately 400 households, invited Neil Wyshynski, the chair of the select board, to educate my neighborhood about the many possibilities for the Newbury property. There were almost 100 neighbors present for this conversation. My neighbors had a myriad of suggestions for potential uses. However, the greatest neighborhood support for the town to purchase the property concerned the town having control for any future uses of development. If the town owns the property, we hope to be able to help shape any development that will occur in the Newbury land. After Neil's presentation, each dues-paying household had one vote, and the vote to urge the town to purchase the property was 52 in favor, 1 opposed. If the town is successful and is able to purchase the property, my neighbors and I expect to be full participants in any conversation that will determine how best to use the property. At this time, it's premature to say what the neighbors would support. That's a conversation for another day. There have been some concerns expressed in the last few months that any development or reuse of the Newbury campus would be sure to engage the wrath of the abutters. I stand here to assure you that this could not be further from the truth. As you consider your vote on this article, please remember that the Fisher Hill neighborhood has a history of working with the town to use vacant land for the betterment of the community. In the last several years, we helped to create the lovely affordable housing development on the former site of the underground reservoir, and then worked side by side with those who designed and created the beautiful park, both on Fisher Avenue. Now I hope that took us 10 years. I hope this won't take quite that long. But we came up with an excellent resolution. In addition, my neighbors and I have welcomed the residents of the affordable housing development into the Fisher Hill Association. Please consider me and my Fisher Hill neighbors to be some of your strongest supporters to have the town purchase the property. We look forward to having a chance to work with the town and with all of you to make the best possible decisions concerning the future use of the Newbury campus.
Thank you. Ms. Frawley, who has figured out a unique way to circumvent the badge issue.
Regina Frawley from South Brookline, Precinct 16. First, let's correct a rumor. The rumor is that I called this town meeting in order for Neil Wyshynski to have one more town meeting under his belt. Not true. Not true, but it's a good idea. And it's not true, Mr. Margolis, that I did this, I would have done it regardless, because what many people here who are new to town meeting do not know, and if you've read the book, then I hope you have, I don't have to repeat everything. We've had a major parcel study starting 20 years ago for 5 years called the Comprehensive Plan, and then reinstituted last February. Named in the major parcel study was Newbury College. I don't know that any progress was made with that. All I know is that when the announcement was made just hours after town meeting, I wanted to know if we would look at, what do we know about it? And I got no response, so I took action. And the action was to find out whether or not all of you would like to take a chance of a lifetime to be able to take this property, and there's only a half dozen major parcels in town that we could possibly grow the town with. In the meantime, I wrote that I did a lot of research, which I had already started, on the various growth plans that were happening at the federal level, the state level, the town level, and the regional level of the metro mayors. We're looking at a goal. It's not exactly technically a commitment. We have a commitment to the goal. The goal will depend on the economics, on developers, etc. Life happens. But Brookline is heading toward about 1,700 in the additional units in the next 11 years. Greater Boston has set a goal, a desirable goal of 185,000 amongst 15 communities. And according to the Mass Area Planning Council, over 400,000 by 2040. I think that it would be delusional not to recognize we're going to grow the population of this town, and people come for the schools, they're going to be children coming. I don't think there's a facility in this town that can be grown on the existing land that will house those children. So Newbury, for me, I understand that tonight, my article, which I was forced to have to submit with it, and the selectmen chose not to open the warrant so that I could modify it. I was happy to have, to hear that BEEP might be on it, but if we don't plan for the future, if there isn't a consciousness raising, and there's enough data in the book that I have put in there, research, do your own research as well. It's coming, and we need to be prepared. And I will say this, it's in my first explanation. Last year was one of the most divisive I've ever recognized since rent control. From my point of view, I would like some peace in this town. And if I believe, and the research indicates beyond any reasonable doubt, that we are going to grow our population enormously, and that means lots more children, then we either prepare for that or do crisis management. Well, we just had a year of crisis management. Neighbor against neighbor, neighborhood against neighborhood. Let's plan for the future. Keep your books handy and please read it carefully, because you can never say again that you didn't know what was coming. It's coming, and I appreciate that the many people, not just Fisher Hill, will be full partners in the discussion about how to develop the land, how to use the land. And just as a little point of pride, my lawyers that I consulted and my training in international law says that just because I didn't say eminent domain did not preclude it. It was always in my mind that we could do eminent domain. It is not a legitimate criticism. So unless there's a 7 plagues of Egypt or 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, we are going to have growth in this town. Nobody's denying it, not the officials sitting up here. So let's prepare for it. And while I understand the resolution is what we're all going to be ending up voting for, please take seriously what's coming, be alert, be ready to participate in a peaceful evolution of how we plan the future of Brookline. Thank you very much.
Mr. Levy and Ms. Stamfer, would you please come forward, after which we'll have a Q&A period.
Good evening. My name is Mark Levy. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 7. I'm also the drafter of the amendment that's to Article 3 that is under my name in the combined reports. And I'm here to tell you that I will not be moving that. I don't believe that the recommendation from the school committee, the advisory committee and the selectmen cures all the ills that I wanted cured in that, with my amendment. But since it's only a resolution, has no force of law, is simply an expression of good intentions towards buying Newbury, I don't think it's worth making a fight over. On the other hand, I would like to draw attention to a couple of points. One is, I don't want this to be taken as an open checkbook. There's always trade-offs in any decision. If we buy Newbury, we're taking the land potentially out of possible use as as taxable property. That's one consideration. The other consideration is that we're going to be bidding against a lot of deep pockets from developers who will have dreams of sugar plums dancing in their heads at the very thought of being able to go to a Newbury site and build something for profit. I don't want the town to get caught up in a purchasing fever. This is not a gold rush. This is a serious consideration of whether or not we should, and under what conditions we should purchase the Newbury campus. If the price is $40 or $50 million, which I think most people sort of expect, then I agree that it certainly is worth looking at and bidding for. If it's $200 million, I'm going to say no thank you. It just isn't worth it. My one concern is that we do take seriously the affordable housing issue. One of the only ways to subsidize affordable housing on a reasonable scale is to reduce the land acquisition costs. If the town is willing to offer a 95-year lease on the property to an affordable housing developer and to keep that lease price below what a market mortgage would be, I think that's one way to get affordable housing without going too high and too big. So that's one of the reasons I support this. And the other reason is that, you know, I've always wanted to chase Golconda just like everybody else. So thank you very much and have a good night.
Ms. Stamford.
Claire Stamfer, I'm town meeting member, Precinct 5, and speaking as a town meeting member, I'm also a member of the advisory committee. Mr. Moderator and town meeting, this special town meeting shows how our government can work quickly to keep options open for our community. Prompt action by town meeting member Regina Frawley resulted in enough signatures to call this meeting in time to give our town meeting the chance for the town to have the opportunity to try to acquire the Newbury College campus, which is a goal that many of us share. The Select Board and the Advisory Committee, with input from town meeting members, the public, and the Newbury College Acquisition Advisory Committee, which includes representatives of the Select Board, the School Committee, the Building Commission, the Advisory Committee, the Planning Board, the Fisher Hill Neighborhood, and real estate and financial professionals have all worked together to come up with a substitute motion for Article 3 of First Special Town Meeting to authorize the Select Board to make serious efforts to acquire this unique 7.8-acre parcel. This motion acknowledges the extensive professional consultations needed to determine how Brookline may best use this property and how to finance its purchase. The discussion has brought out the importance of keeping all options open for possible uses of this property and has recognized how Select Board executive sessions are an important tool to enable the Select Board to negotiate the purchase cost effectively. If purchased, future decisions on the ultimate uses of the property should be made through a fully open community process. Please vote favorable action on First Special Town Meeting Article 3 and no action on the other motions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Bassett and anyone else who would like to ask a question or have an impromptu comment.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Bassett, Precinct 6. I just rose earlier because tonight is another notable retirement. I yield to nobody in my admiration for Neil Wyshynski. I love the way he's muscled in on my political sign business. But tonight is also Betsy DeWitt's last night as a town meeting member, at least for a while. Betsy has been a steady chair of the advisory committee and of the select board, and I thank her for all she has given to town meeting for many years. Thank you.
Mr. Nangle and Mr. Van Skyok, would you please come forward?
Richard Nangle, Precinct 15. When I signed up to speak, I thought this might be a controversial vote, but it's good to see that apparently it is not. The neighbors say, "Please in my backyard." What a fantastic opportunity this is for our community. As Neil Wyshynski said, it isn't often that 7.8 acres becomes available as it has at Newbury College. Let's vote in favor of purchasing tonight and urge the Select Board to do everything possible to acquire the college. This is an exciting time for us. Let's buy and then find the best possible use. Thank you.
Mr. Van. There's been a motion to call the question, terminate debate. I have the following people signed up to speak in favor of. And Mr. Van Scoyoc, I actually didn't see him. Oh, I'm sorry. There you are. Okay.
John Van Scoik, Precinct 13. Imagine my trepidation that you knew I was going to be the next speaker and there was going to be a vote on whether you wanted to hear the next speaker. So this isn't easy, believe me. Good evening, John Van Scoik, Town Meeting member, Precinct 13, and member of the Advisory Committee. I will do my best to be brief because I heartily endorse the recommendations of the Select Board and the Advisory Committee in favor of pursuing purchase of the Newbury site. And as a participant in the Advisory Committee process, I don't wish to be accused of unfairly getting two bites at the apple, so to speak. However, at risk of embarrassing Regina Frawley, I have to say a word of appreciation to her. She got the ball rolling on this, and she frankly blew me away by her ability to round up signatures on short notice and deliver them on time and in good order. And I don't think I could have done that, and Regina, you deserve credit for doing it. I also wish to say thanks to the Select Board, and especially to Chair Neil Wilczynski. He's probably getting a little embarrassed at this point, too. What seemed like mild skepticism in the Select Board's initial response to the citizen-led push for a Newbury Town Meeting quickly turned to enthusiasm and then leadership above and beyond. I personally wish this Newbury effort to succeed. And Neil Wilczynski deserves credit for getting us this far, even if we disagree on the way forward in a post-Newbury Brookline. And Neil, I note that you did refer to the aspirations of some of us for the future use of Newbury as a pipe dream. I want to reassure you, I haven't yet visited the Netta site in Brookline Village, and I haven't been smoking the substances that you so astutely made available to all of us in Brookline for our enjoyment. But, you know, I might get around to it, so, you know. Yeah, okay. This morning, I read a letter on the town meeting listserv, and I was very pleased to see School Committee Chair David Pollock's report of the committee's endorsement of the resolution before us tonight. The potential of Newbury to contribute to problem solving in Brookline is great, and it is good news to all of us that we are united in recognizing that potential. And finally, please recognize that we are also at this promising moment because of the efforts of one of our fellow town meeting members, and the efforts in particular of the Town Meeting Members Association, because of their organizing of a tour of the Newbury campus. What those of us on the tour witnessed opened many eyes, and I just want to say that no one pushed more for that tour than Ruth Ann Snyder, and I know we all wish to see her return to town meeting in good health as soon as possible. And with that, I will step aside for the, I don't know if there's going to be a next speaker, and I'll begin the countdown to the reward for tonight, which will be my opportunity to vote yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Khan, for reminding me of my own procedures, and with a proper point of order, by the way. I have the following, the motion for the question has been made. Is there a second? I have the following speakers who signed up in favor of the, in particular, the resolution, Article 3. Mr. Silberberg, Mr. Doggett, Ms. Poverman, Ms. Jett, Mr. Hochleitner, and Mr. Pollock. Against that background, it takes a 2/3 vote to terminate debate, and if debate is terminated, we will proceed directly to voting. There will be no more comments, no more questions, no more speeches. We will start to vote. So all those in favor of terminating debate, calling the question, please raise your hands. Those opposed, motion carries by a 2/3 vote. Now, we have 3 motions before us. Article 2 and 3 in Special Town Meeting number 1, and Article 1 and Special Town Meeting number 2. I will take them in that order. So the first motion that we will vote on is the motion for no action under Article 2 of the first Special Town Meeting. All those in favor of no action, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries by a majority vote.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to request a recorded vote for the next
you'll certainly have one. If there are, we now turn to Article 3, which is the resolution that most of the comments have referred to on page 3-6. There's been a request for a recorded vote. If you want a recorded vote, please raise your hands. There's 36 town meeting members who want one, so we'll have one. The motion is on page 3-6. The printed motion is preceded by the words voted, that the town adopt the following resolution, and then it's a resolution calling for the acquisition of Newbury College campus by the town of Brookline on pages 3-6 over to the middle of page 3-7. This is Article 3, STM 1, Article 3, main motion. And once again, press 1 on your handheld device if you support this motion, press 2 if you oppose it, and 3 if you abstain. Good heavens. Well, we have a unanimous electronic vote, 199 in favor, none opposed, and 2 abstentions. I don't think it's necessary to continue the scrolling. So I'll accept a motion to dissolve special town meeting number 1. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries by a majority vote. I now convene special town meeting number 2, and the motion before you is on page 1-1 of the combined reports for that town meeting. Instead of to see if the town, the motion will be voted that the town will raise, appropriate, etc., in the words of the article on page 1-1. The motion is made by Ms. Frawley and it has been seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Those opposed, raise your hands. The motion fails. And I call for a motion to dissolve the second special town meeting. So moved. Second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Our town meetings for April 9 are hereby terminated. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.